whatever. Like, it's just something that could be fun to do for the right kind of people.
I think it's too complicated. I think a simpler version that would be less time consuming would just be to find 50 people at various places in the world, North and Southern Hemisphere, and at the very same time, everybody at 5 p.m. Eastern take an angular measurement to the sun at that same moment, and then you can plot that information given the particular angle to the sun of each person at the exact same moment. You can very well determine the shape of the Earth based on that, and that would be just way easier. A one-time experiment.
Well, that means we could do that too. I mean, also, you know.
No, yeah, of course, and that's what I was going to say. Is that I'm not trying to take away from the long-term measurements that you're proposing from a bunch of people. I'm not taking away from that. All I'm saying is, if there's a conclusion that you're trying to reach, that would be the easiest, I think.
I mean, for what conclusion though?
For Earth shape, you can have more data is always better, and I will never put down obtaining more information. I'm just saying, if it is a basic question such as Earth shape, I imagine one at the exact same moment, 50 people take a measurement. I think that's way more than enough.
But what does that prove,
that
though?
question? That 50 people on a particularly shaped planet, seeing the same sun with particular angles, will yield a particular shape that they're standing on.
Yeah, but what I was talking about earlier, I mean, I don't know if you were here. You probably were. Maybe you weren't talking.
Yeah,
the whole point of collecting the data is to compare it to later data, like a completely different area and time. So, like, you know, a full 6 months later. So, I mean, yeah, 50 people, but let's do it again later, and let's do it in between, and let's see what we can gather. I mean, yeah, maybe it'd be a little more.
I'm not putting that down. I'm not putting that down. Okay. I will always say more information is better than less.
I just don't see how doing it once proves anything at all, though. That's why I don't understand what you're
because it's a basic question. Basic questions don't require convoluted answers. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't require a lot of data.
In what way does 50 people prove the shape?
Because if you have 50 people at various locations, if they can all see the sun at the same time, they all at the same moment, like perhaps you're on Discord in VC with 50 people and you say, okay, everyone ready to take their measurement. Take your measurement now, boom, submit the data in the next 60 seconds, and then there's your information. And then based on that, you can plot whatever shape you want under their feet. You will have a point in space in which the sun would reside right there.
But do you not see that lines. Like the knowledge comes from comparing it, not from just a one time? Like, that's the knowledge. That's how we gain the knowledge from that, though.
Do it as many times as you want. What I'm proposing is that it would only require one time. But
that's
do it as many times
specifically
as you want, sure.
What I'm asking. Why would only one time prove anything?
It's all that's required. Because
how? I'm waiting.
Because the Earth's shape doesn't change. So your 50 measurements at the same moment today will yield the same result tomorrow because the Earth's shape doesn't change. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, man. Maybe you're missing the whole point, I think.
No, I get it. I can repeat the entire proposal that you had, is that essentially you would set up a compass and you would set up something that's perfectly vertical, and then you would measure shadows based off that, and then the path of the sun can be determined, and you would have that type of data set all around the world for an extended period of time. And then given all of that data, perhaps you can come to a determination of Earth shape, or perhaps sun path. Perhaps compare it to date, time and date. You could do various things with all of that data. What I'm saying is, if your question is basic, you don't require all of that information.
Well, hold on, man. So, first of all, I think everybody could agree that this one thing that I proposed has absolutely nothing to do with proving an Earth shape. It would simply be comparing it to what the globe claim is. And we could go further by adding additional steps if people want to help us perhaps construct a model, but that would obviously require a lot of data.
Right. And you're saying that I'm not presenting it accurately, yet you reiterated exactly what I said, is that on one hand, you are trying, in a way, trying to debunk the globe model. And then you're also saying once that's accomplished, using the same data, we can then model a different shape, perhaps. It's the question is, what is the shape of the Earth? You're just asking hyper specific questions, but it falls under that umbrella. And what I'm saying is,
Yeah,
I
but
don't think that it's required to have all of that information. You
still
don't
waiting
require
to
that
know
much.
why you wouldn't require more than one instance.
I've said it. The Earth shape doesn't change. So these measurements that you take, let's say right now, all of us that are in VC, perhaps we can all see the sun, whatever. In this moment right now, we all take an angular measurement. At this moment in 24 hours, we do it again. The Earth's shape isn't going to change. We're going to get the same result. That's what I'm saying.
In 24 hours. Okay, can somebody help me digest why doing this once proves anything? Because I'm missing this whole point.
The Earth isn't.
I'm asking someone else in the
fluid.
room because I don't
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
like. I'm not getting more from your answers. So can somebody help me? Anyone?
Here, I'll try to put it in a different way. If let's say there's a basketball in a tree, and there's 5 of us on the ground. If we all take an angular measurement from the ground that we're standing on, that point,
Okay.
if we all take an angular measurement to that basketball, we're going to have particular angles, and it's going to all of those lines that we create are going to meet in one point. They won't intersect each other anywhere else in space. They will intersect at that one point where the basketball is. Now, even if all 5 of us go the next day, the basketball's in the same place. In the next day, we all change our locations. We take that angular measurement. We still intersect at the same point in space. So we only require one set of data in that instance. And then because we're on relatively flat ground under this tree, we can say, okay, given these particular angles, they all intersect at this point. We must be on a flat ground. Now, if we're on, let's say, a giant basketball, looking up at a small basketball in the tree, because what we're standing on is curving, we're going to get different angles such that the lines that we create intersect up one point again. But because we have those angles and the distance to each other, perhaps, we can determine what we're standing on, the shape of it. We only require that one set of data points.
But you understand that in a flat Earth understanding that the sun is also very apparent. So we're not
Whatever
trying
the
to.
case may be. Sure.
Okay.
Whatever the case may be, we can only work with the information, the data, and the evidence that we have. So whatever the explanation ends up being, the data won't change. The evidence won't change. We can work with
Does
that
anyone
at the
agree with
very least.
this?
So it sounds like to me that you're talking about triangulating the sun's position, but with 50 people. Is that right?
More or less, yeah. We can
How
go
does
into
that
the.
change? How does that verify what you're standing on? That would be triangulating the location of the sun, not the Earth or the surface of the Earth.
It would give you a shape of what you're standing on, because if I know that you're 10 feet away from me and a third person's 10 feet away from me, and then from you another person's 10 feet away, given those distances and the angles that we each get to it, we have to be on a particular shape. If we're on a plane, so be it. The evidence and the numbers will match that. If we're all slightly curving away from each other, those measurements will reflect that. The measurements will stand alone regardless, but they have to work on a particular surface. In basic mathematics, we assume a plane when we do all these things. But if we're doing what we would presume as spherical geometry, then that's what we would have to use for all of these lines to converge at one point. But those are just hypotheses. The actual measurements don't matter. Assume a flat Earth, the measurement will be X. Assume a sphere Earth, the measurement will be X. Doesn't matter what you assume. The measurements will be the same.
You need to know elevation, though, right? To form that triangle.
It'd be useful, sure,
Angle.
but that would just be a margin of error issue. That won't.
Yeah, they're
be
all
a,
right triangles. Yeah, this is how celestial navigation works. It's all right triangles, and it all works on a plane. It's the XYZ axis.
If we want to get to that, spherical axis is accounted for, but I'm speaking in simpler terms, in which you're right, elevation would be useful, but that's a margin of error when we're talking about a measurement in the United States, one in Africa, one in Europe. The elevation is just a margin of error. It won't have anything to do with radically changing what the shape of the Earth is.
But won't it dramatically change the angle if you increase elevation?
Not dramatically. Not like I said, it'll be a margin of error. It won't be it won't radically change the shape that you conclude at the end. It'll just be a margin of error.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not good enough with math to be able to challenge that or anything.
No, and that's fine. It's one of those, like, I will also participate in this, in which the measurements would be easy to do. Just a basic ass compass to show that you're on your paper that 12 is north, and then 6 is south, and then you just have a stick that's vertical, and then every hour perhaps you take a picture, and then okay, my phone says 1 o'clock. I've taken a picture. Here's my compass showing north. This is where the shadow touched. And then every hour for 8 hours a day for a month.
Do you know what a sundial is?
I do.
Okay, you're just basically just describing a sundial. This has been done, and this is how this conversation started a couple hours ago.
I know. That's why I mentioned it, because I've been listening to what you've proposed. That's exactly what you guys are proposing, is that perhaps 1,000 people around the world use their own makeshift sundial, and they take these measurements throughout the day. That's why you were talking about a live stream, so you can have continuous information. I'm only proposing a picture each hour on the hour, but the same process.
Oh, that's a good idea, Riggs. Are you still here, Riggs? That's a great idea what Bio just said. Do you hear that? To add like live streaming as well, so people could like be live streaming their actual sundial. That'd be sweet.
Oh, no, I didn't
we could all do it simultaneously. So you could have like hundreds or thousands of people all live streaming their observation of, let's say, the sub-solar point that's timed. So everyone on Earth is, well, not everyone on Earth, but like a lot of people on Earth would be watching it. And then the measurements, and it'd all be live streamed. It'd be like, boom, there's the sub-solar point in that location. There it is in that location. And we're timing it. Oh my God. That's unbelievable.
You can get like 50 people on a Zoom and live stream it.
Hell yeah. That'd be amazing.
That would be.
I don't know if I totally agree with just the one data point or whatever, but I mean, any data is good data as long as it's valid. You know,
no, what I'm saying is like,
you could do the live stream.
What I'm saying is, Riggs, is multiple people. Yeah, multiple people live streaming at the same time, showing their results.
Well, you could do even one stream. You can do one Zoom call with 50 people on it and live stream that Zoom call. Like on June 21st, you all take your measurements, and then you do that same Zoom call again on December 21st. Or whatever dates.
Missing the point. The sun travels around. It's going to take a while to get everyone's live stream data points. No one's going to be on a call for fucking a full day. So just gather the data and put it together. You don't need to live stream anything.
That's kind of like
it's my a novel idea, though.
He's talking about taking a measurement, not the full day, though. In that example.
Well, there's a couple different things. Yeah, it depends. I mean, live streaming an actual sundial is a kind of a slow thing, but you could do that. But it would be cool to have them live stream, because then you could actually have them live streaming at different locations simultaneously and actually know that those are those readings at that location. It would actually help to triangulate everything. And it wouldn't have to be a makeshift sundial. You could actually create a sundial even for very inexpensive with like cardboard, you know, like a pop-up book or whatever. Well, you can make like a little pop-up. It's like a little thing, you know, you kind of cut out the little parts and you fold it together. No, but it could be like a.
That's what makeshift is. That's what makeshift is that you're creating it rather than buying a product.
Well, or you could just have a sundial. But the thing is that like if the gnomon, which is the little angled, rod thing on the sundial, if it was consistent, then we would know what those angles are, because if people had different types of sundials, they might have different angles of the gnomon. So that's the thing about like either making a physical one like made of metal or some like lightweight material. Make them of hemp. Let's make them of hemp fibers. That'd be great. So it's all that healthy for the environment and all that.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
the angles wouldn't be different though. They'd still be the same so long as the top of it, quote unquote, the top is pointing north. You're still going to get the same angles.
the thing is, dude, a sundial, which is a local plane with a rod, will show the planar nature of the Earth in the same way the sextant work does as well, because the sextant is measuring that in the sky, whereas this is just measuring one luminary in the sky, the sun, and how that light is hitting the dial. But they're interchangeable, so they both are going to show this. They both do show this.
Oh, you're right. They will show it, but the angles will remain the same. If you
No, I'm
have
saying they
a,
show the plane. I'm saying they reveal the planar nature of right triangles, X, Y, Z, everything in over the plane, the luminaries in the sky, and right.
So it doesn't. I'm not trying to argue. It doesn't, and I'm not trying to argue. What I'm saying is, if you have a sundial, that's relatively small, and you have a particular shadow, I'm at that same location with a 20-foot sundial. The angles will remain the same. The shadow length will be different, but that angle remains the same. So if you're interested in just the angles, then you're good as far as makeshift ones.
Nice. Or everybody could build one of those Hindu temples in their backyard all over the world.
That's what's up. That's what we used to do. Yeah, that was the architecture of the old world. It always had that built into it. Like their temples actually had openings in them that would show the whole time clock and the whole time system for the sun and for the moon.
Yep. And that one's down to the minute, man. With those little beads, those 3-minute beads, and it shadows either right on the bead or to the left or right of a bead, so it's down to the minute.
Yep, that's the real shit. Those are all geocentric, stationary, planar type, built on those models. Yeah, it's so ancient, and there's so many systems and structures of it. It's been verified so many times throughout history, which is why it's wild how people have been convinced it's a globe now. It's really quite a departure.
Yeah, and that ancient temple should be off now with all the trajectories we're going.
Well, assuming how old it is.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in the age thing. So
Yeah, who knows how old it is, but we should see a procession of Polaris in one lifetime, though. Measurable change.
Is it like 60 years we notice a shift in the sky?
Yeah, I think it's like 17 or 18 years. I don't know the exact degree or whatever, but in someone's lifetime, they should be able to measure Polaris, the precession of Polaris.
It is measured to a high degree of certainty.
The precession
it's one of the ways. It's one of the ways that if you want to talk about ancient cosmology, it's one of the ways that we know that Polaris wasn't the North Star for Egyptians or the ancient Indians.
Are you?
I don't believe that for a second.
Was it Jeruba? Is it Jeruba? What's the name? Gio, you might know the name. Is it Jeruba? Thuban. Thuban used to be their North Star, part of the constellation of Draco, which is obviously not Polaris. So I do support ancient cosmology, especially for that reason.
I don't believe that for a second. 2,000 years ago, you got them naming it after a pole, so-called center pole. So we wouldn't be able to see it move over 2,000 years?
We see it move today with large amounts of time between. We do measure it moving. We do measure it precessing. It's just very small, obviously, like you said, yeah. But
So
yeah,
why do we
given
have the same
2,000
pole
years,
star for 2,000 years?
it's because it's the closest. It's the closest star to the North Celestial Pole. It's one of the reasons why the Southern Celestial Pole doesn't have a star at its pole that it used to. It will one day again. Today it doesn't. The same with the North. There
How
will
would you
come a
know
time in
that?
which there is no star, because we have, as I just said, bringing up ancient cosmology, and the North Star that we use is Polaris. It was a star within the constellation Draco called Thuban. Obviously, the Indian and Egyptian was all by the same name, but it was the star because of the constellation they described. But we know that Polaris is not part of that constellation. Yeah, it's THUBAN. It's pretty well documented.
And didn't they have 800 years of charts 2,000 years ago when they named it the pole stars? Why? They must have been idiots or something. Like what?
Do you have a problem with the naming process?
Bio, you were roboting a lot there.
I don't
but
have a problem with the name.
I did hear most of what you said, but you were roboting at parts. But yeah, Thuban, and that is a claim. I do not personally refer to that as ancient cosmology whatsoever. I know that you were calling it that because of this idea of Egyptians, but I think a lot of that history is fake and implanted in terms of Egyptians and a lot of that part of things. So first of all, to claim that they thought that is really just a baseless claim. There's no evidence for it, and and I also don't think that you're roboting again.
I put that on par with the Aristophanes thing, where all of a sudden in our culture people are talking about it.
Yeah,
But I don't. It's just I don't think anybody talked about. I don't think our grandparents or any of that would have been talking about that or even knew about it. That's a random claim too, but it's one of those things that just pops up and it's in the culture all of a sudden.
It's only in the culture in this community.
No, it's in the global culture. What you're talking about, I've had countless Globers tell me that.
it's global culture stuff.
Exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Do you remember when
in this
that chick Reds?
in this community? You're right. And the streets, if you ask someone who believes in the globe, who has never been a part of this community in any way, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. But in this community, of course, it's repeated.
In terms of all these people that believe in this globe Earth idea, just so you know, like 90 something, I don't even know what it would be, but I would imagine at least 90% of them, if not 95, have literally no idea anything about it. They've never even looked into it. They don't know the radius. They don't know how fast it moves. A lot of them don't even know it goes around once a day. Unbelievable. So it's interesting that most of the people that you know, on the globe believers side, they really are. It's like a whole army of totally uninformed people who haven't even looked into it yet. So it's actually pretty weak. Like the idea that it's mainstream or whatever. Yeah, I guess like, yeah, it is kind of a popular meme right now, or like it's a big troll, but it's actually not built on anything stable. And once it starts unraveling in terms of what actually people actually think the Earth is, it could actually shift very quickly.
The same could be said about in which all the evidence that we do provide is forgotten within 24 hours. The same can be said about them. And then as far as Aristophanes specifically, the reason why it's used so often is because you can repeat that observation. You can repeat the measurements. You can vary them. You can experiment with it. That's why it's repeated so much. It's not random data that's unrepeatable. Do it yourself. Find the same results that are claimed.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to replicate the Aristophanes thing and debunk it very quickly.
Go right ahead, man.
Unlike the claim about the ancient Egyptians having a completely different pole star. That's not something we can just go and do in our living room, right?
It's readily available on Google. You can compare it from ancient Egyptians as well as ancient civilizations. You can compare the information and you'll find that they're congruent, speaking to the same star, which is not Polaris. These are very easily findable information.
Well, finding a Wikipedia article is different than verifying it myself, right?
Never said anything about Wiki.
Okay.
The sources that I've provided in the past are scientific papers, in which there's a shit ton of research, both on the Indian side and the Egyptian side, similar time frames. But yeah, you'll find that they speak to the same constellation despite different names, and they speak to the same star within that constellation despite different names. And it's not Polaris. It's easily it's on Google, man. So just scientific article, Thuban.
Yeah, everything's
North
on
Star,
Google.
and
Any
then,
claim you could think of is on Google, right?
Sure,
probably
any
find an article
claim.
that says eating poop
I'm
is healthy.
speaking to. See, this isn't the
That's funny.
scientific honesty. But, all right, red left. I'll respond in a second. Left.
Well, you actually are still
That's
robot.
not scientific honesty that you should portray. Whatever.
You're totally just
Doesn't matter. If that's the scientific
robot.
honesty you're gonna provide, then perhaps I don't.
There's also information, global information, that states that the same star we call Polaris, the Phoenicians were using for celestial navigation. The same star.
Yeah, it's just rhetoric. It's just a story that, oh, the ancient Egyptians, there was a different pole star. There's absolutely no evidence for this whatsoever. And actually, what's interesting about that is when Polaris was at Good Times for All, Zach just came out with a video recently that I had seen where essentially the guy who first was claimed to have discovered and Polaris, as it were, like in terms of calling it Polaris and all that, called it the pole star, and that's what Polaris means. That's why it's Polaris. So it's called the pole star. However, in this theory that biodual, this idea that that there's a different North Star, why would he have called it the pole star? Because at that time, and he did the mathematics and he showed in the video, at that time, there should have been a different pole star. It shouldn't have been Polaris. So it completely debunks that whole claim.
Yeah, that's what
If your
I was saying.
problem is
in
with the
someone's
name,
lifetime, you should see it move.
This is a big
if your
one.
problem is
It's a
with
good
the name, it's a weak argument. It's a weak argument if your problem is with the name.
Bio, I'm not sure what's up with your mic, but it's very choppy and robot-y, so I don't know if you got to reset or a reboot or something.
Well, no, I'm just drawing a distinction between something which I agree with what Bio was saying about Aristophanes. We can actually go verify that and do the test ourselves. We can't do that with this claim about the North Star being different thousands of years ago. So that's two separate types of criteria, so to speak, that you would use to verify it. You can't verify that. I can go find some papers where somebody's claiming that, but I can't go out and get into a time machine, go 3,000 years ago and verify that it was different. Like, that's two separate things.
Well, exactly. And I'm aware of a lot of the ancient astrological texts and astronomical texts in terms of the positions of the luminaries. A lot of these are actually like etched on stones and things, and these all have Polaris as the pole star. They all do.
Yeah, that one that's allegedly, what was it, 25,000, 30,000 years old, the oldest one. It hasn't changed a bit. I think it's one of those rhetorical kind of stories that get injected into the culture. By culture, I mean it could be some random university or some random paper or peer-reviewed journal or whatever the hell.
Yeah, well, they had to add that in to the model because they basically invoke a wobble to describe their globe. It's like the tilting, wobbling ball, you know? So
Yeah.
because of the wobble, they then have to make it to where that axis would be pointing to a different pole star in their whole heliocentric universe. Whereas in
Yep.
reality, it's just the pole star and all the other stars, and it's the whole time clock. That's just always been what it is.
And then they retroactively added in, like, even though we can verify the so-called experiment by Aristophanes, I really don't. It seems to be a new phenomena where people are discussing it. Like, I know Carl Sagan did the thing in the 80s or whatever. I'm not sure how much before that anyone even heard of this dude.
Yeah, it's just bunk AF, dude. Yeah, they just inserted that shit right in there. Well, see, I actually think, I think that there's been a somewhat recent usurping of the entire human race in terms of these people. So, yeah, they just basically plugged in a bunch of fake history and fake science and fake cosmology and I'm not even convinced that this is the first time they've done it. Like, I think they may have run this program before because it seems like it's quite thought out. It's like this thing's been developed.
Absolutely. And there seems to be a trend. There's usually at least 300 years before all of a sudden there'll be a text claiming something from 300 years before. So it's like, because after 300 years, especially before the internet and all that, nobody's grandma's there to check you or nothing. You can just say whatever you want. Like, I think most of those Greek writers, we have no verification. There's not a single primary source whatsoever. Not some leftover tab or anything in somebody's attic or some cave or nothing. Not one single primary source.
Yeah, it's just all stories. Right, it's just all stories. Yeah, I know, it's insane.
It could have all been backdated. Very easily. Especially back then, you could say, hey, this and this happened over here in this other area. Nobody would know how to check you on it or nothing. But like 300 years ago in these mountains, this and this, you're like, okay, there was a man like Socrates and all that. That could have been a whole panel of people writing that shit. There might not have ever been some dude named Socrates.
Right, and I think this is what the Freemasons do. They've exactly. Yeah,
The reversal continues.
they just hire